I know. Y'all thinking the same thing. What does success look like for Herb Jones in 23-24? Well, if the numbers from his first two seasons are any indication, the answer might surprise you. Let's get into it.
You must know that first. Can't nothing and nobody fade what we trying to do and what we about to do. Second thing is, we got this game on our level. You understand what I'm saying?
Welcome to a new episode of In Space. I'm your host, Chris Connor. Got to give love, as always, to the good people at the supporters here, Jägermeister, DraftKings Sportsbook, Birdsall Law Firm. Shout out to the entire Brew Crew family, all putting out good content. If you haven't checked in with Chaz, you haven't checked out In the Know, if you haven't checked out what Chris is doing on the Saints side, PPT, 5 Lido, please check in with us. Shout out to Lala, shout out to Justin and Ross, as always. Let's get into it. Herb Jones. I've been meaning to kind of do this show for a little bit. I just had some other things that I wanted to talk about, and I couldn't put it together in my mind mentally. But it probably would have been a better time to do it around the time he got his extension. And there was talk about, I even did a show a few weeks ago about what a starting lineup would look like with him and Trey. I've said previously, if you got to choose between who to start, Herb and Trey. Starting Trey will be my selection. Some people didn't like that, which is cool. But not only did Herb get an extension, he's also been selected to the select team, which is basically going to be Trey Murphy's on that team as well. Basically going to be guys practicing and scrimmaging, extra bodies in case someone goes down or something happens for the team that's going to be the World Cup team, the FIBA team that Brandon Ingram has already been selected on, for example. So shout out to her, shout out to Trey for that. But yeah, that conversation has been rapid. Propels Talk did a show Sunday about Herb, and well, it wasn't about Herb, but one of the topics was, well, who's a better player, or who would you rather have between Austin Reeves and Herb Jones? 5 had a really good segment on that discussion and pointed out some things that highlight some of the elements that Herb can do well, that he has shown you that he can do, and maybe some ways that he's underutilized. Lido dropped the show strictly about Herb and how good he is, a lot of his defensive highlights and accolades, and just how special he is or can be for a dude that doesn't get a bunch of, national praise, especially by award selections defensively. What am I missing here? Chaz did a show about Herb being a 6-man. If you haven't checked that out, I think that dropped in July. Talked a little bit about some of those possibilities, showing Trey a lot of love, but it also did the same for Herb. And I know In the Know with Shamit and Mason had some Herb talk recently as well. But this show is about a little bit of mixture of all of that. And overall, what success looks like for Herb upcoming. What does it look like from a statistical standpoint? What does it look like with your eyes? And this is really a subjective question, because I want you guys in the comments, like, subscribe, share, as always. Y'all tell me, what does it look like for you guys? What is it? Is it a jump in his numbers? Because for me to even ask this question, I had to go back and I looked at a lot of different numbers and things that I thought I knew answers to, things that just were no-brainers to me, though actually wrong. Now, sometimes the things with stats is difficult because, with this particular team, with the Pelicans, and so many different guys in and out the lineup and your stars playing limited games, of course, that plays an impact on what guys can do or the different responsibilities that are asked, and maybe some aren't able to do it consistently. But we're going to get into the numbers, and they surprised me in some areas, because look, Herb across the board, and for my audio listeners, what I'm about to show, my first two illustrations that I'm about to put on the board here, the first two show basically generic box score numbers, points per game, 3-point attempts, things that you can find kind of anywhere. and it aligns his rookie year and his second year. The stats show the same player, and it's almost crazy how identical it is. Herb definitely, in my opinion, outperformed anything your wildest imagination for his first 2 years. Some expected a bigger leap. There were others that even going into the season were like, nah, like, let's chill. Like, this could just be who Herb is. I think Schmidt and both Schmidt and Chaz were on that line of thinking before the season even started. I did a show, I think in December, when he was struggling, had a month from hell. Before he slowly started to, I think post All-Star break, a little bit after that, started to find his rhythm, had a really good closing. But, you know, all in all, he had his rookie and his second year were almost identical. And we're going to look into it and show y'all what I'm talking about, because it's kind of crazy. So we're going to start here. Like, I'm not kidding. For audio listeners, points per game, you're talking last season, 9.8, his rookie year, 9.5. I mean, even the fouls are almost identical. The turnovers are identical. It's like, to me, it's crazy. Like, that's crazy that you can be this kind of guy. And he's not the only player that's like that. But the reason that this is something to talk about, while Herb didn't necessarily break the bank, he got quite a raise. So I think, there's going to be, even if it's a smaller spotlight, there's going to be an expectation for him to show some kind of improvement. And we have to keep things in perspective. It could just be from a percentage perspective. Maybe the overall volume of numbers don't change, but we'll get to the percentages shortly here. But yeah, I mean, rebounded, pretty much the same. You go from 3.8 to 4.1, assists 2.1 to 2.5. And then we get to the percentages here. The percentages show, field goal percentage, he was more effective overall from the field in his rookie season, 47%. But second year, we're talking 46.9, right on the edge of 47%. The field goals made and field goals attempted are almost identical. 3-point percentage, both 33%. Rookie year, 33.7. Second year, 33.5. He attempted just about the same amount of threes. Same with the twos. The free throw percentage was much better in his first year, 84%, 76% year 2. But I mean, outside of that, everything else is almost the same. So, you got to ask, well, yes, overall success for Herb may depend or may have to do with the guys that are healthy and playing. But if you look at his splits that ended the year last season, that might tell you a little bit better. And even if some of these are, you don't expect him to shoot 40% from three like he did, I believe, for 1 month necessarily, not expecting him to average 15 points a game, I do think an increase is in order, and I do think it's a possibility. I don't think it's going to be that difficult for him with a little bit of more creativity, specifically in the offense. And, simply just having maybe a healthier team for, longer stretches. But I mean, look, if you're shooting 33% from three, teams are going to consistently dare you to shoot, whether Zion's on the floor, whether Ingram's on the floor, who are constantly getting double, triple team. Herb is going to have to, I think, improve as a shooter. Even if it's 35%, you need a little bit of a better, of an improvement there, I think, to make a difference. Now, look, man, I watched when JJ Redick was in New Orleans, I watched teams sell out on stopping Zion drives and leaving JJ Redick open. So teams are going to pick, right? I mean, the Warriors, I use this example a lot, but the Warriors to stop certain actions and stop people diving and block off driving lanes. When they played the Kings in the playoffs, they had to pick someone. So they let Kevin Huerter, who was one of the best three-point shooters in the league and had a great season for Sacramento, they let him shoot. It wasn't like they just necessarily ignored him, but they had to pick something. They lived with that. It's a big difference between letting a dude shooting almost or at 40% shoot and a dude that's, streaky and that for a career shooting 33%. This isn't a knock on Herb at all, but it's the reality of what he's going to face, even if he does improve. Now let's look at March and April, for example, of last season. That's not it. There it is. And here's where, to me, the improvement lies. Now, I automatically thought, when I was doing my research, I said, well, if I had to guess, like I would guess the Pelicans were over 500 when Herb shot the ball well from deep. Or let's say, for example, at least made 2 threes. They were actually under 500. They were 89. That was a little bit surprising. Now, you got to hold some context in that. I think a few of those losses were during a stretch where he was forced to shoot more while Brandon and Zion were both hurt. But I accumulated, because a lot of people, when they ask about Herb Jones improving, they think about the amount of space that's given to him. And we automatically assume sometimes that him just shooting the ball well makes him overall a better player, makes the team better. I don't know if that's the case. I look at the points. I said, all right, well, maybe if he scores above his average a little bit more, and 12 was where I was at per game. Maybe they're over 500 then. No, 500 on the mark. So, and given how close to 500 the team was, right? I mean, that's still, you still have to keep that in perspective with how the team overall finished. But that surprised me a little bit. But to answer the question, if we're talking stats, we're talking numbers, when you look at the March and the April he had, and some of this is not sustainable. Like, I don't think Herb Jones is not going to shoot 40% from 3 next season. I don't think that's going to happen. Going from 33% to 40% is a lot to ask for somebody. You're talking an elite shooter. I don't think he's that guy, but he was that guy in March of last season. In April, I think it was like 5 games. He shot 61%. He was spectacular. Averaged 15 in those games. He averaged 9, which is on par for what he typically averages. The free throw numbers were down, but the true shooting was up, and the usage was one of its lowest for the year. March seemed, I don't know what, maybe scheduling, because there were some bottom of the standing teams listed all over the schedule for March. We talked about how important that was so many times during the year. But, a lot of guys, Trey Murphy had an amazing March. I think Jonas had a really good March. Brandon had an amazing March. I mean, that was big for a lot of different guys. And Herb was the same thing. But he was just simply way more efficient. Like, plus minus, plus 12. He, his first time since December reaching, he had back-to-back months where he was almost a net negative consistently, but nothing really changed. Right? I mean, he was hot, right? He found his rhythm. He was more confident, and it was showing. And look, I think that's really the answer to the question. If we're talking stats, an improvement for Herb is probably a combination of March and April with probably, a dip in 3-point percentage some way, somehow. So maybe that's more looks at the basket. Maybe that's more cuts. Maybe that's more free throw line shots. When I looked at his numbers, his free throw rate was one of the things that was better from year 1 to year 2. Like, he was much better at getting to the free throw line in year 2. And analytics also show, ironically, he was a better defender in his second year than he was in his first year. I say ironically, but I only say that to where I did see some folks look at him and question his defense during certain periods because some of the foul trouble games and some of the big score performances that other stars ended up having. But that's going to happen regardless. The numbers show, and it kind of adds up. He was a little bit better from a defending perspective in year 2, but he got a little bit worse offensively. So, I mean, I look at this, and I think March and April, you're talking close to 20 games. That's close to of about 20 games there. Somewhere in the middle of that. Now, that doesn't all fall on him, right? I think Five talked about it. Like, when I mentioned he had a really good segment, Five talked a lot about the staff needing to be more creative in using his strengths, whether that be as a screener, whether that means cutting or as a cutter. Maybe that means a little bit more of a Herb at the 5. Whatever you think his strengths are, they have to be able to use it. I think getting him in transition works really well. I think he's one of the better transition players on the team. With the Euro getting to the line, finishing, dribbling, and in traffic. It's not. I'm not calling him LeBron James by any means, but I think that's a strength of his, especially when he's able to force a turnover and get running that way. I think when he has the ball in his hands, I think he's for a size for his position. I think he's a solid passer. I think he's a good passer. Specifically when you allow him, looks where he's at the top of the key, or he has elbow looks and he's driving like pick and roll. Herb, I think is underrated. And I think he has shown the ability when needed. I mean, is a dude that spent time playing the point guard position. I think that's a weapon that they have to find ways to use, not just when the team is hurt, but when the team is healthy. And look, he was experimenting, and I think the key to unlocking this for him, with the space that he's going to be given regardless, is the mid-range game. And I'm not expecting him to turn into Brandon Ingram consistently. Right. I'm not asking him to turn into that overnight necessarily. But we saw him specifically earlier in the year in the preseason. He kind of scrapped it as the year went on. We saw more push shots. We saw a few more mid-range attempts. That might be the way, right, to raise that shooter percentage, to give us a combination, make up for the 3-point percentage of last March and April that just isn't. It's just not sustainable. But could he still finish somewhere around 12 points a year? I mean, 12 points a year. Jesus, 12 points a game for the year. I think the rebounding has to get better. So maybe around 5 or 6. And then assists 2, 3. If he stays in that range, I'm fine with that. But I do think that we need to see even a small raise in his ability to, in his numbers. And listen, I mean, when you get a contract extension, we're not the only one. I'm not the only one that's going to think that. But the way that Herb works, I do think it's something that's going to be attainable for him. But again, it's not just all on him. But the mid-range game, especially with his willingness to shoot free throws, willingness to get to the line, his growth in that area, him being able to destroy space by shooting an occasional mid-range shot, slowly what we started to see Trey use a little bit every now and then as the season progressed, some of the things he's been working on. To another respect, Zion, when he really got going, we saw him shoot a few more, few pivot turnarounds. I'm not saying that that's going to be Herb game. I don't want to see Herb in a post necessarily, but I'm just saying that ability to eat up the space that teams are going to give you with you not being a sniper of sorts, mid-range jumper, floater here and there. You add that into an occasional 3, and with some of the things he can do when going downhill, I think that can unlock some added things and slowly start to help him get better. Because I do think that 3 could possibly, I think the 3 will get there. I think he will have a season or 2 before he retires where, he's 36, 37, 38%. As he gets older, I think he'll get better. Some guys never do it. It's hard to ever look at it, but I think with the work that he puts in, and he's sure going to have a lot of opportunities to shoot the basketball with the way teams are going to defend the Pelicans. Those years will come. But for next season, not expecting a large jump, even if that 3-point percentage is up at 36, 35%, if it goes up 2, you fine, you won. That's perfect. You won't see anybody lose confidence in because there were a couple games where he was taking off the floor late. You can't really afford to do that. You kind of have to close with him. And I mean, even if it's an occasional extra closeout, someone just having to think, I think it could go a long way for him in year 3. So shout out to Herb again for getting paid. Shout out for him being on the select team. I'm rooting for him. And I think he will get better. I don't think him being a more efficient player, slowly getting better in a few different areas is a crazy ask, even for a guy in his 3rd year. I think what Herb about to be 25, 26, right? It's not like he's the youngest, and I could be like, he could be older off the top of my head. But It's not I don't think it's crazy to ask, and I do think he can do it. So we'll all see what it looks like. I appreciate y'all, man. If y'all had a chance to check out the Will Guillory video, you know, my guy from The Athletic, we had a really good talk earlier today. By the time this video comes out, you either have seen it or you need to go back and watch it. That was a fun time. I appreciate y'all as always. I'll check in with y'all maybe later on in the week, or if not, next week. Appreciate the support and love as always. You were in space. You out. Najee.
In the building. I told you last time, get with us or get out of here, man.